Welcome to the 1960s Project. The 1960s Project brings you voices from the 1960s. In the 1960s Project, we've been recalling, remembering, and reflecting on events that have influenced our lives. My name is Jerome Page, and we'll be holding our third conversation across generations this evening. My guest today will be talking about what he included in a letter to his parents who were children in the 1960s or young adults in the 1960s. Before I bring my guest on, I have three asks of everybody who's tuning in. One, I ask you to like and follow us, What's on Jerome's Mind, on Facebook. My second ask is for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, What's on Jerome's Mind. And the third ask is to read and comment on our blogs, which are in the website, whatsonjeromesmind.com. As I mentioned in previous shows, there's a rule of thumb that generational trauma can exist for at least 5 generations. That means if we start today, we can create a new script for our family and others to break the effects of the trauma we're experiencing today. We can break a curse. We can also create new habits. For me, I knew three of my 4 grandparents. I knew both my parents. My father's passed away. My mother's still living. Obviously, I know me, and my daughter, and my grandnieces and nephews. So I have firsthand knowledge of 5 generations. So if we're talking about intergenerational transfer of effects, I have some firsthand knowledge of how this could be transmitted. So, and through the work of one of my sisters, I can extend my knowledge to 9 generations, starting in 1792 with Shadrach Palmer in Virginia. So one way to turn things around is to pass on the lessons we've learned from our generation and from previous generations. That's what we're doing in this show. We're holding a conversation across generations. Brian McCollum will be sharing life lessons he learned from his parents, who are children of the 1960s or young adults in the 1960s. Through our conversation, we'll learn from Brian about his parents and the life lessons he got from them and what he is passing on. So now let me welcome Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Dr. P. How are you, sir?
I'm doing quite well. I'm not going to get into a lot of information about you, and that will come up as we have the conversation. Mm-hmm. So let me start so we can anchor this chronologically, if it's not too embarrassing. How old are you?
How old do I look? No.
Well, I don't know. You look ageless. So.
Yeah.
Well, each year everybody looks younger and younger.
Right. That's what they put in the water. No, I am 44. I turned 44 in December of this year. So okay. I do a lot of hot Pilates and yoga and stuff to kind of keep it together. You know?
Okay. And where do you practice?
There was Ivy City on Beacon Works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I think we've probably been in class together.
Yeah, probably so.
Just didn't put it together, but yes, I still do it online. I took Omakonga's 6 a.m. virtual class this morning.
Yeah. Dr. O actually went. He went to Morehouse for a year and then he transferred. But yeah, Dr. O and his wife Kendra. They have a lot of different studios, and yeah, they're great.
Yeah. Okay. So I said, okay, that's why I know you. So I know you from the hot Pilates. And do you do the drip class as well?
That's a little bit too much for me, man. I stay in my lane. You know?
Okay. So you were 44. So that means you were born in what year?
1976. I'm a bicentennial baby.
Okay. Oh yeah. All right. So good. So your parents, how old were they in the 1960s?
So my parents were in their 20s. Actually, they graduated from college in 1964 and 1965, respectively.
Okay.
So mid 60s, they were like 20.
Okay. So in 1960, who graduated in 1964?
That would be my mom, Gloria
And
McCollum.
what's her name again? I'm sorry.
Gloria McCollum.
Gloria McCullough. And where did she graduate from?
They both graduated from South Carolina State. They
Okay.
actually met there. There's a funny story about that. But
right.
yeah, they met. Mom was the cheerleader. My dad was the quarterback. So.
Oh, okay. So one of those. That's South Carolina State is been in the news lately with Representative Clyde Byrne.
Exactly.
Repping South Carolina State.
That's what you got to do.
So he wore his get up to the inauguration.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay.
Well, a lot of HBCUs have just kind of really been in a lot of shine lately. It's and Claflin down there is killing it. That's right across the street.
Okay.
From South Carolina State, but yeah.
Yeah, I graduated from high school in 1965.
Gotcha.
So I'm be the same graduating class as your father.
Yep.
Okay. So so I'm old enough to be your father.
Yes, sir. And then hot Pilates, but my dad wouldn't be in hot Pilates
though. So yes, I graduated from 1965 from
awesome.
Germantown High School in
Philly,
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I know exactly where Germantown is.
Okay, yeah, I grew up in the Germantown area, in Philadelphia. So that's another story, but it's not about me today. So. How would you describe? So there was a lot going on campuses in 1964 and 1965. Yeah. Did your parents consider themselves to be quote unquote children of the 1960s?
I would say yes. I would say yes. There was so much that would probably be hallmarked as foundational occurrences that were happening in the 1960s, and to experience it as a college student. When you're just starting to get independence from the family and stuff like that, you're starting to make your own decisions. I think they took a lot of pride and ownership with a lot of the things that were happening in the 1960s.
Okay. Have they shared any family stories about their experiences in the 1960s?
Absolutely. Like there are so many that the one that was probably the most meaningful one to me was when my mom marched with Martin Luther King. And so Martin Luther King was, she would tell us this story verbatim in the kitchen, like as we were growing up, to the point we were like, okay, we would say it with her.
Do you remember which march it was?
So this was actually, he was on a tour. And so he was doing a lot of the schools in the South. This was around the, was this the bus boycott? I can't remember what sparked it, but I knew that he came to campus a day before and had a meeting with everybody. And she said she remembers him saying, this is not for the weak at heart. There are going to be a lot of things that are going to be happening to us tomorrow, and if you're not able to display self-discipline, maybe this isn't for you. He said there are going to be people, calling your names, spitting on you. Like, she got real graphic because that's what happened. And then the next day she went and she actually got arrested, with all the other protesters. And so I always told my mom she was a jailbird. So,
do we have a picture of her holding up her number?
Oh no. If she did, she burned it. But I used to always talk about that. I was writing a book about them. I was writing a book, and one of the chapters was a country boy and a jailbird. I was talking about my parents.
Okay. So, and then what about your father? Was he, what kinds of actions, what kind of stories did he tell?
Absolutely. So my dad is interesting because, he went to South Carolina State on a full scholarship, athletic scholarship. He was the athlete of the family, starting quarterback, pitcher, and basketball forward. And so from his family, he was the first to go to college. And so he took that extremely serious. That's something that he wasn't about, pledging or anything else that was going to jeopardize him getting his degree, because that's kind of where his mind was. So.
Okay. And what part of South Carolina did he grow up in?
Oh, well, mom grew up in South Carolina. Dad grew up in Florida.
Okay.
Dad grew up in Arcadia, Florida. Mom grew up in Orangeburg.
Oh, Orangeburg, South Carolina?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so that's where they went to high school. And did they share any stories about their pre or high school days or pre-high school days?
Well, what's interesting is that what I do remember about my mom's side, because my mom's side, I come from educators, and I'm in higher ed now.
Okay, well, and we'll get to that. Yeah, we'll let people know where you are.
It's interesting because my grandfather was a principal, and my grandmother was a teacher, but this was in elementary school. And so, my mom and her siblings could not get away from her parents, because, you cut up in class, it's getting back home. And so that was a lot of there was an importance on education.
Okay. Yeah. So your father's family was he was first generation.
First generation, yeah.
And your mother's family had a tradition of being educators.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And so can you briefly describe their professional career?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Dad ended up doing engineering. And so to this day, he still kind of does engineering things like that. He got his degree in mechanical engineering. Electrical. My brother did mechanical. Electrical engineering. And at that time, when he got so he graduated from South Carolina State, and then he also graduated from George Washington with his master's.
Okay, well, for the audience, what does a mechanical engineer do?
So mechanical engineer, basically, his first job was working with IBM. So he did a lot of building computers and stuff like that, looking at systems in terms of like he always talks about how he thought about the internet before it happened.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. But that's how engineers think. I'm a pastor, so I don't think that way. But yeah, so that very technical side. Mom was she was an educator. She did conflict resolution in DC public schools, but she also taught in her early years. She taught in the classroom. Then as she got older, she started doing facilitating and doing workshops and things like that, but still in education.
Okay. Any particular focus on the facilitation? Was it like group conflict resolution or?
Yeah, well, she did the whole gambit. So she worked for DC public schools. And so when they had problems in schools, or she was training the trainers that they had in individual schools, she would come in and run those workshops. And we always had to use iMessages in the house. She was like, no, use iMessages. So it takes, so you decline.
Yeah, okay. So again, you say your mother's name is Gloria, or was Gloria. She passed away?
Yeah, she passed away in 2014, actually. And she grew up Jackie Mae Greenlee, actually, but she never liked that name. So when she got married, she changed her name to Gloria Greenlee McCollum. So she got rid of the Jackie Mae. She thought it was too country.
Well, let me welcome a couple viewers here. Pamela Alexander says hello, and Okella Trice also. Okella Trice is one of my sisters, my oldest sister. She says hello. She says she's here. So welcome to Pamela and Okella.
All right.
Your father, was most of his career with IBM?
No, he actually did the first few years with IBM, and then he started his own company called CBM. which is actually my brother's initials, Clarence
Okay.
Bernard McCollum. But doing the same types of things, but he had a very entrepreneurial spirit. So that's where we get a lot of that in my family. So, yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned your brother. How many siblings do you have?
I am the youngest of three.
Okay.
My oldest sibling is Pamela McCollum Butler. And then my brother is Clarence Bernard McCollum. And then it's me, Brian Keith McCollum.
Okay. And then another one of mine, this is going to be a family night.
Yeah,
My brother joined, James Page. So I have one sister, one brother, and one close friend on here. So this is a friends and family evening. Welcome everybody. Yeah. So your parents are educated. Now, what about the education of your siblings? Start with the oldest one.
Yeah. And I preached on this one time, and this was from my parents. Between the three of us, we have 9 degrees. Okay. And I just got accepted to another program, but each of us have 3 degrees, and I'm going for my 4th one in May. So, yeah.
And what 3 degrees does your oldest?
My sister has her bachelor's from Spelman. She has a master's from Georgia State and a PhD from Howard.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then your brother is the second.
My brother did the 3-2 program at Morehouse. So 3-2 program is when you do engineering. You do the first 3 years at Morehouse and last 2 years at a partnering school. So he has 2 bachelor's degrees, one from Morehouse, one from Georgia Tech, and then he stayed at Georgia Tech for a master's degree in electrical engineering.
Okay, and let's get to you. So let's learn a little bit about Brian.
So I have a bachelor's degree in business administration from Morehouse. I have a master's of divinity degree from Princeton Theological Seminary, and I have a master's of strategic communication from Columbia University in New York.
And what is strategic communication?
Strategic communication is basically being able to craft messages so that people understand them, and you're able to influence people to make decisions. You know, the whole go from thinking about something to actually doing something. Think, feel, do. There's a lot of strategic communication that you'll see in advertising, in politics, but you don't see it. It's kind of behind the scenes.
Are you a Marshall McLuhan fan?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
The medium is the message, or the medium is the massage.
There you go, Doc. There you go. I love it. I love it.
Okay. All right. So that's a standard, because that's kind of the 1960s speak.
Yeah.
That well, it's called the medium of the message, but the official title was the medium of the massage, because they made a printing error.
Okay. Okay, you learn something every day.
So they made a printing error. So you often see it referred to as the medium of the massage. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's understanding how hidden symbols, messages influence how we think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I totally believe that. I totally believe that.
Yeah. And one of my co-producers for this show has just gotten accepted in the strategic communication program for a PhD at Howard. So she might be calling you for a little guidance. So you might be hearing from her. So she just got her acceptance letter about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, that's all right. I just got my acceptance for a PhD at Hampton and everything for
in what area?
Educational management. I'm actually looking to be a college president.
Okay, well, I had aspirations of being a college president once. And look at me now. Didn't quite make it. I made it as far as interim provost on a campus.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
I noticed you're at your Wesleyan Theological Seminary, which is there right down from American University.
Yes, I'm actually looking at AU right there.
Yeah, I completed my master's and PhD in economics at American University.
All right.
Yeah, so we're familiar with the location of it. Yeah. So you're a theologian. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that is a fair. Actually, I'm teaching a class right now remotely for 10th graders in Texas. It's a Bible class, and I tell them a lot of us are theologians. It's just how you look at what a theologian is. Really, the study of God. If you've had a thought about God, you are in the scale of being a theologian.
Okay, well, and I think there's a lot of people who are in that scale. We'll probably have to bring you back to talk about God.
Oh, absolutely. I'm actually ordained in the Presbyterian Church.
Okay, are you affiliated with as part of a pastoral part of a church now?
Yeah, well, I do pulpit supply at my home church. With COVID and everything, we're remote, and my pastor was going to bring me on as on staff, but giving kind of went down a little bit.
Okay.
Shift some things, but anytime he needs me to preach, I come in and I give a word.
All right. So Marie Farmer just chimed in. She's the one who just got accepted into the strategic communications program at Howard. Yeah. So congratulations to her.
Absolutely.
So let's go back to your parents. In what ways did your mother influence you?
Well, she taught me how to make macaroni and cheese.
Ooh, okay. All right.
But I remember when I was growing up, my mom used to always tell me, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And so that she always had like these one-liners that all of a sudden they just come to mind right now. But I think that kind of helped me to understand priorities for things, right? Some of the things that, what's important. And so that kind of helped me triage things, if you will. If that makes sense. And seeing her hard work ethic. I saw her get up early every morning, and go to work, sitting on the side of her bed. And, what you see, you start to emulate, right? Mm-hmm. So some of that, a lot of that has rubbed off on me. I get up at 4:30 and I'm at it. I'm an early bird.
Okay. Well, my brother has his favorite saying is more is caught than taught.
Come on now.
So so you caught a lot from your mother.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I hung out with. I'm a mama's boy, self-professed. A lot of that is because with my siblings, my sister, my brother. My brother's 8 years older, my sister's 11 years older, and so a lot of times when I was young, they didn't want to hang out with me. So my mom was like, "You can hang out with me." So, I have a high tolerance for shopping. Like I could cook a lot, and so I learned a lot from my mom. And yeah.
Is that where you got your sense of fashion from? Because you look mighty dapper there, my man. I'm feeling underdressed here.
Dr. P, come on now. You're making me blush, Doc.
I'm feeling underdressed up in here.
No, she always said that women look at your shoes. So, I always come with a clean pair now.
All right. Okay.
A lot from my mom. I actually preached her funeral. I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I am a mama's boy.
Okay. So, yeah. And okay, so somebody says make him show his cufflinks. All right, so bring it on, Brian.
Hey! Can y'all see that?
All right. Ooh, lovely.
Oh, wow. Y'all crazy. I don't even know. I can't.
Okay. And so what about your father? How did your father influence you?
Oh, growing up, I thought my dad could do anything. I thought my dad was Superman. And it was so funny because like my dad, he's like 6'5", and growing up, he was like, I don't know, like a superhero, like he was so big, right? And, but seeing him, the work ethic that he had, being an entrepreneur, because entrepreneur people like it. Oh, you don't have no boss, this, that, and the other. But if you don't work, you don't eat, And so my dad, had a relentless work ethic, right? Mm-hmm. And that has rubbed off not only on me, but my brother and my sister. We we get at it. I remember my dad building houses from the ground up, and sometimes during the summers he would let me work with him, and so I would go around working. So I learned how to do stuff. And there again, my siblings were off doing their thing as teenagers, but I picked up these things from my dad, and how he was very, very attentive to the other. We wouldn't pass a homeless person without my dad giving something or talking to the person. I was like, I could have used that money, but now I do that. It's yeah.
All right, so you're getting ready to do your 4th degree in educational administration. So
yes,
and you're headed to be a academic administrator, with specifically a college president. I was my academic administration creds are I was chairman of a couple of departments, and like I said, I was a associate provost, and then doing the search, I was the interim provost for campus. So
I love it.
I didn't quite make it to the presidential ranks, but I'm still, my heart is still in the educational field. I was in public higher education for 25 years before I became self-employed. So
so you understand.
Yes. Oh yeah. Well, I have similar stories about my father, who he was self-employed. He had a barbershop, but also in the coming out of the post-World War II in the Civilian Conservation Corps, he was trained in painting and paper hanging.
Gotcha.
And so we were always fixing and I never got the hang of paper hanging, but painting and stripping floors and unsticking windows and hanging off ladders on the side of the house. I guess we got a lot to share there.
I love it.
So how would, if you're going to write a letter to your parents, how would you open or begin that letter?
Well, son, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. My mom, anytime we would ask for something, she would start that poem. So to the point we would start repeating that. And so I would actually start it with that, just as a joke. But, on the serious side, my deep gratitude, I don't know if words can really articulate the lessons that have been passed on from my parents, the ones that they were teaching when they didn't even know they were teaching. And
I'm not gonna let you off the hook, since you're in strategic communications. Now, how would you open this letter? What's your opening line?
I would open it with how can you say thanks for just all the things that have been imparted to myself and my siblings. Like, the word grateful doesn't even begin to define or encapsulate the gravitas of how thankful we are. And growing up, I thought that everything was what we had was what everybody had. So I thought it was normal until I got to high school and, in some respects, middle school and things like that. And I started to see differences, and I was like, oh, well, maybe this isn't everyone's story. And that's fine. Everyone has a different story, right? And so I am grateful for my story. I'm grateful for the ups and downs, the goods and the good and the not so good.
So where did you grow up?
Forestville, Maryland, Doc. Right outside. Well, they rezoned it to District Heights, but I rep Forestville. Anybody you're like, oh, Brian reps Forestville. With a Sharpie. And so I am PG County all the way. Yeah.
All right, that's so we have to have a conversation like, what does it mean to grow up black in a black suburb, but that's another story.
I don't have enough time.
Because Prince George's County, for those, which is outside of D.C., Washington, D.C., is often referred. The District of Columbia has 8 political wards, and Prince George's County is often referred to as Ward 9 because so many black folks, the black suburbanization of Washington, D.C., in terms of numbers, was a movement of black folks from Washington, D.C. to Prince George's County.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's a whole story there about the black suburbanization and Prince George's County becoming the first predominantly black major suburb in the United States. So that's dropping little historical pearls here as we go along. Absolutely. So you're opening the letter with a sense of gratitude.
Yes.
Okay. So what are you grateful for? So you're writing this letter. So, dear mom, dear dad,
yeah.
I'm trying to write this letter, but I'm struggling for words because there's so much gratitude that I'm filled with as I think about what?
I think about what you had to overcome to get to where you were and the lessons that you wanted to impart on us, the values that you wanted to give us about the value of an education and the value of hard work and being someone with integrity. What does that mean, right? Looking at my dad, like my dad is the epitome of a man to me. I grew up wanting to be him. I wanted to be an engineer until I took my first engineering class. I said, "Oh, give me business."
Yeah, well, that sounds familiar. I thought I was going to go to engineering school. Yeah. After that physics class, that was it.
I'm good. But yeah, it's just it was. A lot of people talk about how they had it hard growing up, and I don't think we had everything, but it just feels like I had what I needed. I didn't realize, I was, if I didn't have it, I didn't realize it, and so I love the way I grew up. I have no qualms about that, and the aspirations, wanting to go to college, because I grew up around the time of A Different World and Cosby Show and stuff like that, and so those things were aspirations, and we would sit at the table. I know this is like a foreign idea, but we actually sat at the table and ate dinner. It's crazy, that actually happened. I remember sitting at the table and talking like about how our day was, and that was like foreign. Like when I would go to school and talk about that, my kids, most kids was like, I ate dinner in front of TV, like, and I wanted to, but that was something, we could look at TV later. But looking back on that, that was amazing, right?
Well, Shawnee Plummer says, kudos to your parents for raising such a well-rounded person and a snappy dresser. See, everybody on that dressing thing.
God is good.
And she says, I'm very proud of you. So,
praise God.
Thank you, Shawnee.
Praise God.
For those. So we have education, we have hard work, we have aspirations.
Yeah.
Where did the religious values come in? How were they part of it? Did you go to church growing up?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we went to church.
Well, what was a Sunday like for you?
Yeah. That's interesting. What's so funny, Dr. P, is that I'm Presbyterian, right?
Okay.
And I didn't know Presbyterians was a mostly white denomination, no joke, until I got to high school. I thought, because I went to a black Presbyterian church. I was like, oh yeah, whatever. I go to a black church. And when I was like, I'm Presbyterian, people was like, what are you? What is that? Like, and so anyway, but I loved it because
let me stop you here. So how did Gloria and what's your father's name?
Clarence.
Clarence.
Yeah.
how did they end up coming from the South and being Presbyterian? Yeah, I want to know that story.
Here's the story. So my mom was Baptist and my dad was Methodist.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
They grew up that way, right? And so when they got married, the compromise was to both leave both of their churches and to find one together. And the one that they found together was a Presbyterian church in DC, because my neighbor went to a Presbyterian church. So,
okay, do you remember the name of that church? Is it?
Oh, I still go to it now.
Wait, what's the name of it?
Sergeant Memorial Presbyterian Church.
And where's that located?
Nanny Helen Burroughs.
Okay.
So yeah, it's right there in northeast.
Northeast. Okay. Yeah.
It's remote right now, but yeah, that
okay.
is where we grew up. But the interesting thing about the whole love for theology and ministry, it's interesting. When I told my mom, I said, I think God is calling me to ministry. She was like, oh, well, that's about right, because you will be following in, your grandparents' footsteps on both sides. That was the first time she told me I had people who were ministers. I was like, okay, you know what? What? I'm thinking I'm breaking new ground. They were like, no. Actually, that picture is from Princeton. When I graduated from Princeton Seminary, there's a really, really interesting story about this. The guy I'm shaking hands with is Dr. LaRue. He taught me how to preach. He is a tenured preacher in homiletics. But wait,
a tenured preacher in what?
Homiletics, the study of preaching.
Okay, I didn't know there was a formal name for that.
You learn something every day, Dr. P.
I'm up here learning.
But what's interesting about this picture is that both of my parents were at this graduation, and I was chosen from my class to read scripture during the service, during the graduation service. So I sat up with the faculty. Mm-hmm. And my parents, they got to sit in a special place because I was up there. And when I got to sit up, when I got to speaking, my dad, it was like, that's my son, right? And so my mom was like, Lord, my dad, he done gone crazy. He talking to random white people. It's just crazy. But the thing was, the reason why he was so ecstatic about that is because when he graduated from South Carolina State, his mother worked clean houses for white people. And when he graduated, his mom couldn't come to his graduation because the people she worked for wouldn't let her off.
Ooh.
Yeah, and
well,
so
I have to pause on that one.
Huge thing for him to be at a Princeton seminary graduation and his son is up there speaking. So yeah, that meant a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to pause on that. Those are the kinds of things that make you really appreciate the struggles that our grandparents and parents often went through for us to get what we have.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And so this is not about me, like going and getting a doctorate. It's not about me. It's about those who are looking at me and those who came before me and those who are coming after me. I'm doing this because my grandmother couldn't, come see my dad. And, hopefully she's in heaven smiling at me. I'm making her proud.
Well, if you're not making her proud, you're making us proud. So we channeling proudness up here. I'm quite sure. I'm quite sure you. Well, it's part of a legacy. I opened the show talking about how many generations I know. How many generations do you know firsthand?
Firsthand. So I would say it would be. Well, I've only known my mother's grandmother, my mother's mother, which would be my grandmother.
Okay.
So it would be Gege, my parents, me, and then my daughter and my nieces and nephews and stuff like that. So I guess that's 4 levels.
Yeah, that'd be 4.
Now, I've heard stories of people beyond my grandparents, and so I've heard stories of them. So that wouldn't necessarily be firsthand, because I've talked to my dad about how he grew up and being around his grandparents and things like that. But that was secondhand stories. So
I'm going to come back to that. We have a question from Gail. Do you know Lawrence McGuinn? Also graduated from Princeton Seminary. Maybe in the 1970s. He's the Methodist minister living down in Milwaukee.
Maybe if I see it, because the thing was, before I came here, I do. Hey, there it is. Come on, I'm Alex. I'm working at Wesley Theological Seminary in fundraising. So I'm the vice president of development. Before I worked here, I actually worked at Princeton Seminary, where I graduated from, as the director of recruitment, and then later director of alumni relations. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of the outward face to alumni. So, and I did that for a while. I think if I don't know him by face, he may know who I am, because I sent out a lot of stuff to the alumni at that time. But yeah, it's a very robust community.
You were saying you heard stories about your father's people and your mother's people. How far back?
So I had, because I used to talk to my dad about what it was like growing up, because I like I said, I was writing a book. That was my first book, but then
what's the title of the book?
Well, actually, I stopped writing that, but I just finished another book, which is going to be my first book, called The Love Principle.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The Love Principle, building community through love. Love stands for liberty, openness, vulnerability, and equity. So that's being edited now. So
you talk fast, so maybe you could. So for us people who have a certain age, you might have to slow it down just a tad bit.
What's up? I preach fast too, so
okay.
So yeah. I'm sorry. So The Love Principle is going to end up being my first book, and I'll be going back to my other book called Meantime.
Before we go there, what does the L stand for in the Love book? The L stands for.
The Love stands for.
The L stands for.
The L stands for liberty.
Okay.
O is for openness.
Okay.
V is for vulnerability, and E is for equity.
Okay. And when you bring these together, what's the basic premise?
When you bring that together, you are creating a healthy, thriving community. Not saying that there won't be conflict, because that's just a part of life, right? But I think that there's a way to really have social sustainability. That's really what I'm going to be writing about in my thesis at Hampton, talking about social sustainability, because we talk a lot about economic and environmental sustainability, but there's also a social component to that. How can we create communities that will thrive from generation into generation to come? So yeah, that's
that's another show. There was a documentary this last weekend on HAPI, which is HAPI, which was the original name for the Nile Valley, and they were talking about politics, economics, and community, and how we're that's part of our rich tradition.
Absolutely.
And we see in those principles now are being expressed by some groups as these are the new way to be radical is to be radical about these principles of individual health and community health. These are the acts of liberation today.
Amen.
Right? So that's you're right on time, brother.
Well, Doc, I'm just happy to be here.
Okay. All right. So we have religious values, we have entrepreneurship, we have education, we have service, hard work. What other things did you learn or caught from your parents, or just growing up generally?
Yeah. I think that wanting to, amen, wanting to really give back,
Okay.
and not succeeding just for success, but succeeding so that you can help someone else along the way. I think that that's part of our purpose in life, right? To
Mm-hmm.
help lift people up, lift each other up.
Mm-hmm.
I have a personal mission statement. I'm a mission driven person. And my personal mission statement in life is to effectively help improve the lives of others through ministry, higher education, and social justice. And I feel as though we should be able to help somebody along the way. And I think that might be why I love ministry. Uh,
Okay.
even though I'm here raising money, and I'm very good at it.
All right. I'm gonna call you, set up my foundation, hire you as my development director.
Come on, Dr. P, holler at me. But no, but I think that even in that, right, we raise money so that we have resources to help others, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even your show, right? Your show is helping others. Your show is reaching out to others, spreading insights on things that people are having, improving their lives with, right?
There's a saying in the early 1900s from the National Negro Women's Council. We have to lift as we climb.
Hey, come on!
Yeah, so that was part of the
I love
group of Black women who post Reconstruction, bitter times, so Jim Crowism, but they saw education as being important along with other activities, and their motto is that as they raised their economic and social status, they had to bring people on. So we lift as we climb.
Yeah.
And so that's an important kind of concept. And more current day is that we have to give back and pay forward.
Yeah.
That's the notion of.
I totally agree with that, and I think that's how, Dr. P. I think that's how we'll get to a thriving community, just across the board. Thriving in education, thriving in entrepreneur endeavors, spiritually, emotionally, because I think right now with the pandemic, everybody feels separated physically and emotionally. So we need that.
Mm-hmm. Now, Okella says, when you're talking about the stories, she says second and third hand family stories have true value.
Absolutely. And I want to speak to that actually, because I talked to my dad. What was it like growing up in Arcadia, Florida, right? This small little town in Florida. And what's interesting, this whole being an entrepreneur didn't start with my dad. It really started with, his parents and his grandparents and things like that. So much so that my dad, as a young child, he did something called working the seasons.
Okay.
And so him and his sisters and his mom, it was almost like migrant workers, what we would call migrant workers. Mm-hmm. They would follow the seasons during the summer, depending on, if it was watermelon season, they would pick watermelons and stuff like that, and they would get paid, and then they would move up to North Carolina and pick whatever, beans, potatoes, and all the way up to Rhode Island, New York. And it bled into the school year. So my dad, even though he grew up in Florida, the beginning of the school year, he was in Rhode Island. So he was taking classes in Rhode Island, you know what I'm saying? And then they came back during winter break. So, and it started over in the summer. So that mentality of, and even when he went to school, when he got out of school, he would go and pick. But all of that money that they saved up, they built their own house. And back then, having a house, that they built from the ground up was unheard of, right? And so, but that work ethic was something that benefited him as he got older, and went on to South Carolina State and other places and stuff like that. So,
Oh, Okella chimes in again. My. So she's feeling the spirit, them, Brian. we've been talking about your academic career, you're in theology, but I realized when I read your bio that I knew you, not personally, but I said, that's the guy from Step Africa.
Yes, sir.
I said,
That's
I said,
look at that right there, getting it. Matter of fact, you see that stage in the back? My dad built that stage. That's crazy. My dad built that stage.
And where was the stage located? What building?
That stage, I'm trying to remember. Is that Dan's place?
Okay.
Or Dan's place? That might have been Kennedy Center. I can't really remember where that was.
Well, tell people what Step Africa is.
So Step Africa is the world's first dance company dedicated to the art form of stepping. And so I actually was in Step Africa for 12 years. Mm-hmm. And when I first started, I left pharmaceutical sales to actually join Step Africa. I was like, I'll do it for a year, whatever, travel the world. 12 years later, I was like, yeah. 12 years later, I just fell in love with it. Just being able to bring a smile to somebody's face by what you do on stage. And it was great, travel the world. I've been to over 50 states. 50 countries. I've been to every state in the union. And yeah.
So the founder of Step Africa's name is Brian. Did you ever get confused as being the founder?
Well, no. Absolutely not. Because he used to always call me Mac. Everybody would call me B Mac, Mac, or anything like that. Brian Williams, we call him Willie or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So right. Like separation and stuff like that. But yeah, so
yeah, I'm ready to bust out in the alumni dance that I don't know, but. To convince Brian that I knew him from stage, I said, well, I remember you doing the South Africa boot dance. And I was always amazed at the way in which you performed that. And Brian mentioned that his father was a big guy, and Brian was like the biggest guy on the stage.
Right.
So,
that's right.
Tell us about the boot dance, the South African boot dance.
Absolutely. The South African gum boot dance was a dance that was
gun, G-U-N?
Gum, like
G-U-M. Okay. Mm-hmm.
The South African gum boot dance. So the boots that we wore were called gum boots. And so basically they were worn by the miners in the diamond and gold mines in South Africa. And a lot of times there was a lot of they would get bored and they would want to do things to kind of engage with each other. And what they found is they started doing dances by hitting and making sounds and beats on their boots. And then it kind of became a thing where it's almost like stepping. When you go to a college campus, you see people out on the yard stepping. They're trying to show who's the best. You had different minds competing against each other, and so it became this great big thing, like with similar to stepping. But a lot of people say that the gumboot dance would be like a cousin, a long cousin of stepping, because stepping didn't start in Africa. It actually started in the United States on college campuses from fraternities and sororities. Mm-hmm. It does have influences from like hambone, South African gumboot dance, things like that. But it started in the United States.
So we'll have to get you and Brian Williams, the two Brians, on here. We can talk about Step Africa.
Yes, sir.
We got a lot to talk about, a lot of follow-up conversations. I've been to many of Step Africa performances, particularly the holiday show, which is quite memorable.
Yeah.
A couple of the major fundraisers, where you guys perform. So guys and gals perform. Yeah. And then recently, I know where I saw it last. There's a group called the National Education Association Foundation. Mm-hmm. And they had a virtual gala on this past Friday evening.
Okay.
And one of the performances was Step Africa.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And you know what? They look so young. I said, man, I said, there are babies up there dancing. So yeah, as recently as Friday,
Yeah.
I got a glimpse of a Step Africa performance.
Yeah, they're doing some amazing things. Like I told Brian, like if I had to audition now, there's no way I would have made it. Like I was like, nah, I got in on my humor. And so
oh, well, that's all right. Well, we're glad. No matter how you got there, I mean, and then as we were talking in the beginning, I guess our paths have crossed at the Bikram Yoga Studios because you see people, you say, well, I think I know that person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see you doing those Bikram yoga poses because then you were one of the tallest people in the class as well.
In the front of the class.
Yeah. Showing me off. I'm a wannabe, and you be up there doing it.
I don't know about that, Dr. P.
Well, listen, let's get back to the letter. So we're opening the letter with a sense of gratitude.
Yeah.
In the body of the letter, we're talking about all the values and the principles you have absorbed. How would you close the letter?
I would close the letter by saying, and now I just want to make you proud. I want the things that I do to carry on the legacy that you all have made, that you have imparted to us. I want to take it to another level so that others can see, but know that I stand on your shoulders. Like I'm not, I realize that I am not doing this by myself. I am doing it because of the work that you have, the foundation that you have laid. I'm able to do this.
Or let me put it a different way. What promises or assurances would you give them that you were going to carry on the tradition?
The promise and the assurance is that I take them with me every day, everywhere I go. I will always find a way to talk about my parents. If you've ever heard me preach, I always talk about one of them. And it's because that's what it is to me. I wouldn't be who I am without them. Neither would my siblings. We wouldn't be the people we are.
All right. Well, Brian, thank you very much for sharing the outlines of the letter to your parents. It was Barbara Yvonne Saunders Paget, another cousin. It says, I enjoyed this, Jerome.
Praise God. Praise God.
Great. So thank you very much. And this, for those who want to view this later, it will be on our YouTube channel. And also, if you'd like to share one of your letters, either through a conversation or actually writing, contact us. We'll be glad to pass it on and provide you a forum for doing that. So thank you for joining us, and good night, everyone.
Thanks.